I was concerned when I saw your house. Are you living off your pension? My daughter-in-law's voice dripped with sarcasm. It's enough for me to live a normal life, I replied, keeping my tone even despite her obvious provocation. But won't it eventually run out? Won't you end up coming to my parents' house for help? She pressed, her sharp tone daring me to react. I'd appreciate it if you stopped, I replied firmly. I've never even considered that. Oh, but it could happen any day now, couldn't it? Freya smirked, her mock concern unmistakable. Better for me to figure it all out while I still can. Her tone shifted abruptly. Do you think you can handle this? She demanded, leaving me confused. Before I could respond, she delivered the final blow. Because now I'm cutting ties with you, once and for all. Her declaration stunned me, but my daughter-in-law had no idea what she was about to face. My name is Gianna, and I am 62 years old. I live alone in an apartment in Irvine. My mother divorced shortly after I was born, so I grew up in a single-mother family. Fortunately, after the divorce, my father provided me with adequate support and cared for me until I entered college. After that, I joined a fairly reputable company, and my boss introduced me to my future husband, which eventually led to our arranged marriage. My son was born soon after, and we were enjoying our days together. But my husband died suddenly, because of illness shortly after my son began working. My son's name is Zachary. He was an honest child who cared for me as a child, but his personality began to change when he entered college. His selfishness worsened after my husband died, and he would say things like, I'm on my own now, so leave me alone. I'd say he's become more dependable, but I'm wondering if it's because I'm getting older that I'm feeling a little lonely. My son married the daughter of one of his client's presidents, whom he met through a business acquaintance. Her family seems to be a rich family, and they look down on my son, who comes from a single-mother family at first. But her father said, talking about family background nowadays is an anachronism. That is fine if you both agree. When I first visited her parents' home for the wedding ceremony, I was astounded by its size and magnificence. I then gave my son the house I was living in and moved into a new apartment that I purchased with my husband's inheritance. It is in Irvine, but I like the peace and quiet of the suburbs. My son's wife, Freya, had the temperament of a wealthy daughter from an old rich family. She seemed to look down on me, a divorced woman living in a small urban apartment. It felt like she assumed I was struggling financially and relying on a pension to get by. I don't mean to be rude to you, but may I ask you a question? She asked. Yes, what is it? I responded. I'm afraid you have financial problems, my daughter-in-law said directly. Thank you for your concern, but I've been able to make a decent living, I replied. My family is quite prominent, and my father is the president of a well-known furniture manufacturing company. He's the CEO. Do you get what I mean? Freya went on, casually boasting about her family as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Then, without hesitation, she asked, So, do you think you'll be able to secure financial support? What do you mean? I said, puzzled. Oh, let me tell you frankly, I don't want our money going toward your living expenses, she stated coldly. She believed I was a poor woman who would be a burden on her family. Oh, I never thought about it, I said hesitantly. Perhaps not now, but you will, won't you? My son's wife insisted. I was wondering what kind of education she got. Oh well, thank you very much for your generosity, but you don't have to worry about that. Keep that in mind, I replied firmly. She then walked away from me. Her reaction was unusual, and I could tell how bad her personality was. Sometime later, my son and his wife visited me. I made a lot of homemade dishes to keep them entertained, since my son returned after a while. My mother was from the Anaheim region, so I made light-flavored dishes. I made a vegetable stew and boiled some fish. My daughter-in-law is from the Palm Springs region, so she thought they were too bland and didn't taste good. It's a pretty bad dish. Is there more meat or something? Freya asked critically. I'm sorry, I grew up near the sea, so I know how to cook fish but not meat, I replied humbly. You had a very poor diet, didn't you? She added dismissively, brushing off my modesty. But I wasn't impoverished. I'm not sure how you define poor, but we weren't, Zachary replied. My son, who was standing nearby, unusually took my side. But it looks poor because there are only vegetables and fish. This vegetable soup was made from instant tofu and dried seaweed, my daughter-in-law said arrogantly. Her arrogance was unending. I don't make ready-made meals. I make it by myself, I replied angrily. But Mom, her family's meat dishes are excellent, my son interjected. Palm Springs has many brands of elite beef, and I'm now a big fan of it. I didn't understand what my son was thinking. He reversed his earlier opinion and followed up with his own wife. Her family, by the way, is living in a well-known area in Palm Springs for its elite beef. Go ahead and slice the premium beef. It's so tender you can almost cut it with chopsticks, and it just melts in your mouth, she said with a self-satisfied tone. Oh, my bad. You're used to having the finest cuts, aren't you? They're quite pricey, though, so I wouldn't expect them to be your thing, Freya added with a playful laugh, hiding her smile behind her hand. One day, I was invited to Freya's parents' home. Because it was the end of summer and there were a few tourists, I was asked if I wanted to come. It was my son's idea this time. I accepted the invitation because I had no plans and had not had the opportunity to visit Palm Springs. Despite the fact that it was an invitation, I brought some sweets from a long-established Irvine shop as a gift. Don't worry about it. I get tired of eating so much, but since I'm here, I'll receive it, Freya said sarcastically. My son's wife's sarcasm irritated me, but this is my in-laws' home. Except for me, everyone was an enemy. My in-laws' house was as beautiful as ever. They had renovated the garden and created a pond in which the carp swam gracefully. The carp cost approximately $1 million. They are few in number, but I chose quality over quantity. I counseled them, Freya's father boasted. His wife looked overjoyed. I was reminded of how much she shows off things. My son and his wife invited me to a luxury hot spring hotel nearby. I enjoyed their magnificent hot spring facilities, as well as the pride and joy of fine Kobe beef. I think I would have enjoyed it even more if there were none of Freya's usual sarcastic comments. Then, there was the time when we went to my in-laws' house to say thank you and goodbye, and we were all drinking tea together. Thank you very much for your assistance this time. I was able to enjoy the hot spring and delicious food because of you, I said, expressing gratitude. My thank you speech turned into a terrible situation. There's no need to thank me for that, my daughter-in-law said sharply. My son has been blessed with a wonderful family, and as his mother, I am grateful. Thank you very much, I added politely. I was concerned when I saw your house. Do you live with your pension? Freya continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. That's enough for me to live a normal life, I responded. But won't it eventually run out and force you to come to my parents' house for assistance? She asked provocatively. I'd appreciate it if you could refrain, I said, trying to remain calm, added firmly. I have never considered it. No, it could happen anytime soon, couldn't it? So I'd better get it figured out while I still could, she said with finality. She got on the main talk. Can you sort this out? She added. What do you mean? I replied, confused. I'm not a monster, my daughter-in-law said firmly. I invited you here to have one last good time with your son. Did you like it? Yes, it was enjoyable, I admitted. That makes me happy, Freya said, her tone shifting slightly. So I'm going to cut off a relationship with you once and for all. What? What do you mean? I asked, stunned. We would be greatly inconvenienced if you became a beggar, so we would prefer that you became a stranger, she explained coldly. Beggar? Stranger? I repeated her words, trying to comprehend. That's why I'm asking you to abandon us now, she continued. Do you get what I'm saying? I felt enraged by her condescending attitude, but managed to keep my emotions in check. I realized what you meant. If you wish that, I will do so, I said calmly. She seemed relieved by my response. Don't worry, I've already prepared the bus fare for your return trip. By then, my son's wife said sarcastically, adding insult to injury. Anyway, I just want to thank you for what you did this time. Thank you a lot, I said curtly, before leaving. I returned to Irvine after those dismissive words. I was furious at what my son and his wife had done to me, but I didn't take any action. Then, in an attempt to de-stress, I traveled to Los Angeles, a city I adore. I've stopped sending money to my son for good since then. I had been giving him some of the dividends from my father's stock as pocket money, but I had no choice but to stop. when he told me he was going to distance himself from me. My son begged me to keep giving him money, but I refused. I will no longer support you because we broke off our relationship, I told him firmly. Apparently, he hadn't informed his wife that I had been sending him money. Freya held his wallet tightly, and apparently, he had been spending my money on anime merchandise. When they got married, Freya threw away all of his prized possessions, and he gradually began collecting them again. Then, I heard that Freya's father had passed out. Fortunately, he survived, but due to his stroke, he could no longer work. My son and his wife assumed the roles of family governor and president. My daughter-in-law's family is quite wealthy, but their company's management was aggressive and unpopular. Since my son and his wife took over the company, it had been plagued with issues. Clients were dissatisfied with how the company was being run and stopped doing business with them. I would normally have gone to see her father because he was my daughter-in-law's father, but since I had been cut off, I did not. Freya has a similar personality to her father, so she probably conducts herself the same way. However, in my opinion, she does not appear to have much business acumen. I was concerned about her future. She is selfish and looks down on others. The company's sales have fallen as expected, and the new business she started failed to materialize, leaving them with even more debt. Sales of high-end furniture, the company's mainstay, remained slow, and it was clear that the company as a whole would lose money in the future. Despite my concerns, I decided to wait and see what happened. The company conducted a major reorganization, replacing the entire board of directors. My son, the new president, downsized the main business and established new divisions. It seemed the decision was made by Freya, the company's largest shareholder. My son, as the representative director, seemed almost invisible. It was clearly her way of doing things, and it turned out to be a big failure. Sales on the main business operations plummeted, and the new division performed far below expectations. The stock price dropped significantly as the company's performance deteriorated. The company's survival became doubtful as more employees, having lost hope, began resigning. I had been watching the stock price fall. Dividends were no longer paid. Quarterly reports and stock analysts' general comments were depressing. The company may be delisted soon, they warned. If the stock is delisted, it will be impossible to trade shares, and raising funds would become extremely difficult. Banks are unlikely to extend loans, leaving them with liquidation as the only option. Her parents owned local forests and properties, but they were in rural areas and unlikely to be worth much. Still, they had no choice but to sell them. I couldn't be bothered since I was cut off from them. I carried on with my life as before. My son and his wife contacted me several times, but I ignored them. While I was touring the LACMA museum, admiring the art galleries, I got a call from one of the staff members. "There's a visitor here to see you," he said. "Huh? I don't have an appointment, and only a few people know I'm here." "What is the visitor's name?" I asked. "Her name is Freya Miller," he replied. "Miller?" I paused, stunned. Then it hit me. "I know her. Please ask her to leave," I said. "She's very eager to see you," he added. "She even got down on her knees. How should I deal with this?" "Send her to the guest room," I sighed. "I'll return once I finish getting ready." I changed into something more appropriate before meeting her. "It's been a long time," I said, greeting her calmly. "I understand your family and I have been cutting off our relationship. What made you come here? I had no idea you'd go this far." "It's been a long time," Freya said, looking apologetic. "Thank you so much for forgiving me for all the disrespect I've shown you in the past." "What is this?" I asked sharply. "I'm not forgiving you. I only came to see you on a whim. Misunderstandings would make you difficult to think." No, she stammered, her voice shaky. "My words were too strong. I apologize." Her face was flushed with nervousness and my cold attitude. "I've heard that you own this mansion. Can you tell me how you got this?" my daughter-in-law asked. She must have heard something about my true identity somewhere. It was clear to me that she had come to me because she was desperate for money. "That's none of your business," I said with a smile, dismissing her. "This is my father's villa. It was given to me by my father," I added after a brief pause, deciding to speak clearly. "Oh, who is your father?" she inquired further. "Jasper Hill." "He's deceased, but don't you know him?" I responded. "What? Oh, the former president of Highland Commerce? So does that make you his daughter?" she asked, visibly stunned by the revelation. "Let me explain this in detail," I began. "I am the daughter of his ex-wife, and I use my mother's surname. My half-brother is the current president of the company. My mother has already passed away, and I have distanced myself from the Hill family. My personality is not suited to business, so I delegated company management to my younger brother. I wanted to live quietly for the rest of my life, so I received a portion of the company shares as an advance from my father and got this house," I explained. "I see," she said, seemingly understanding. "Let me tell you about my current financial situation," I continued. "As an inexperienced stockbroker, I don't buy or sell stocks, but I receive dividends twice a year, which cover my expenses. I don't want to live a fancy life. This house is managed by my brother. He has a maid stationed here, so I can use the house any time." "Huh?" Freya exclaimed, momentarily at a loss for words. I followed up. "So why are you here anyway? Let me guess. You just wanted to make sure I'm completely abandoned, didn't you?" "Yes," she confirmed. "As you are aware, our family business is struggling, and I was hoping you would be willing to assist us." "What's the point of this?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "When my father became ill, my husband took over as president, but he was inexperienced. As a relative, I thought it would be better if I took charge, so I assisted him in various ways," she explained. "Do you mean that my son was merely an ornament for you to wield real power?" I asked, my voice cold. "That's exactly what I'm saying," she admitted. At this point, she must have concluded that her evasions were futile. Her explanation was accurate, though. "What happened next?" I pressed her. "The product mix change that I had initiated failed, and we were saddled with massive losses and debt. I did everything I could to help," she confessed. "So you're saying you've turned to me?" I asked. "That's correct," she replied. I let out a sigh. "Do you want me to assist you with that?" I added. Yes. I'd be enlightened to assist," she stammered. "Do you remember what you told me?" I interrupted. "You said you would isolate me from your family because I'm a nuisance. What exactly are you saying and doing now? Is it not a bother to beg for money?" "Oh, it's for money," she said quietly. "That is known as begging in this world," I continued. "You are correct," Freya uttered. "Right?" I told her with a smile. "I will decline. I don't want you to dismiss me. You've treated me so poorly, and now you want me to assist you. I apologize. I'm sorry, but I need," she said as she bent her knees, rubbing her chin against the floor. I didn't pay attention to her. "I am not a person capable of giving alms to a beggar. Please leave," I concluded angrily. "Please, please, please. The bank will no longer lend to me, and I have nowhere to rely on," she cried, still on her knees, her dress hem a mess. "Please leave. I sincerely wish you the best. The visitor is leaving. Show her to the entrance, and for the last time, sprinkle some salt on them," I instructed my maid. The maids dragged her out of the room as she remained on her knees, refusing to move. I went back to my room, gazing out at the endless ocean, and softly murmured, "I just want to live in peace." Later, I learned her company went bankrupt. She gave up her land and house to settle down, and with the little money left, she rented a small house and worked part-time. I returned to Irvine and have been living in my apartment ever since. When my son married and moved out, he bought a cat for me because he knew I'd be lonely. The cat, Zephyr, is a Maine Coon. He has long hair, making him difficult to care for, but he enjoys being brushed. Seeing his comfortable face makes me happy. Zephyr was in my arms, staring out the window with me. "You were the size of my palm when you first arrived, but you've grown so much," I thought. Before I noticed, Zephyr had fallen asleep. It's true what they say about a sleeping child growing up. "If you grow any larger, I won't be able to hold you," I whispered, brushing the tip of his nose. As I closed my eyes, Zephyr slept beside me. "I'm going to have a good dream," I thought, as I drifted into sleep.